Welcome to Brooker Bonsai, and today we're looking at my Red Beech. This is probably my second or third largest tree in my collection, but I've only recently acquired it. So I bought this 2, possibly 3 years ago, and it was much taller, really leggy, and instead of just hard pruning everything back and hoping that I get buds sprouting out where the branches were, I've been slowly trying to push it back year on year, doing some branch selection and trying to get that kind of really compact growth and create that taper within the branch and movement. We're starting to see some good results here. The top part of the canopy is much more developed than the lower half because that's where it's more vigorous growing, so it gives me more opportunities to prune it back and develop those branches. Whereas the lower branches, whilst there is some good movement starting to form, we've got a branch like we have here that's particularly long and straight. I have noticed that there are a few buds now forming on more closely into the trunk, so we might be in a good position this year to remove some of this straight branch structure. It's an important time of year because it gives you the opportunity to get rid of any bugs that are hibernating in the leaves. I can already see quite a few across the branches, so I'll defoliate it and then spray it down with some rose clear. So let's zoom you in and we'll take a look at the tree now. So here's the front of the tree. You can see it's in its nice autumn colours. Coming around to the side, to the back of the tree, around to the side and to the front. See here in the upper canopy there's some large branches that I've removed that are starting to heal, and you can see here on these kind of bigger, thicker branches the tree's responding really nicely and starting to heal, and we're getting a lot of back budding. So today we're going to start off with removing some of these leaves. For this I just use these kind of fine tipped bypass pruners. It's spring loaded, so it makes it easy to trim and remove stuff quite quickly, but with them being thin, it's only really good for, say, thin branching or kind of removing the leaves. So I'm going to begin by just giving the leaves a light tug. As you've just seen there, some fall off, others will need a bit of pruning. I've waited until the trees become quite spread with the autumn colours before removing any of these leaves. The Red Beech, because of its namesake, it does remain red. The leaves are red all year round, but you can see as they start to go yellow and crispy, that's when I know that the chlorophyll has all been drawn back into the tree and that these leaves aren't contributing now to the growth. The beech will hold on to its leaves up until early spring, where it will then shed them and grow new leaves. So by doing this exercise, we're just removing any chances for insects to overwinter on the tree because this can cause health problems in the long term. You can see at the top here we've got some quite nice compact growth. Contrast with the larger leaves that you can see here from the tree that come out in spring. So throughout the year, because of pruning, you can take the leaf from about this size down to something quite small like we've got here. So once I've got that initial branch structure in place and taper on the trunk, it'll then be a case of building that ramification, and we should see the leaves start to reduce in size over the next few years. So here's one of the straighter branches that I mentioned earlier. It's one that I've been working on for some time, trying to kind of push it back and get into ramification closer to the trunk. And we can now see that we've actually got a bud forming here. But today I'm probably going to remove it to this node just to give us a bit of safety, and then hopefully in spring this will grow out nice and strong and we can remove the entire branch. Don't know if you can see this, but we've got tiny caterpillar on this leaf here. So this just highlights the importance of doing this this pruning at the end of the tree before it goes into dormancy, because those insects will continue to eat the tree. Not caterpillars, but other insects may burrow into the bark, and this can cause a lot of health problems for the tree. So by removing all the leaves and giving it a good spray down, we're just setting the tree up for success. You'll be able to see here we've also got different size buds, so we can see that this one's really vigorous, whereas the ones up here are much smaller. So again, we'll manage the tree's vigour by potentially removing the vigorous ones and favouring the smaller ones. So removing all the leaves like this, not only is it good for finding insects and removing them, but it also gives me a really good view of the branch structure of the tree, and this will be crucial to help me form those decisions on what to prune back and what to keep. You can prune the branches with all the leaves on, but it doesn't give you that really good view of the tree and its structure. So with this tree I can prune it quite often. It's used in the UK for hedging. So what I tend to do is let the lower branches grow really long and leggy over the growing season, and not really pruning that, and just using the lower branches to prune back into the older wood in autumn. Whereas the top of the tree, I'll just do some branch thinning and tipping of the branches, because this causes more ramification and forces the energy down back into the tree and balances it out more effectively. I'm trying to use clip and grow where possible on this tree. I don't think I've done any major wiring throughout the tree's life. So that's the tree all defoliated. My next step is to come in and just remove the moss from the surface of the soil. You can see that there's a really nice layer that's grown over the growing season. I want to remove this whilst it looks good. It again presents opportunities for insects to overwinter in there, and that can impact the health of the tree. Also, with the moss, and in the UK we get a lot of rain, it can mean that the soil stays very wet and damp, and it's hard to keep an eye on it to make sure that the tree's not getting too waterlogged, because this can ultimately lead to problems such as root rot for the tree. During its hibernation period, all I want to do is just remove that moss, and for this tree it does like a lot of water, so come spring I'll probably remoss the surface so that the pot stays nice and damp and the tree can continue to draw water from it. So let's take a look at the surface of the soil and we'll begin demossing it now. So all I want to do is come in, take the moss, and just kind of scrape the soil back onto the surface of the pot. I'll set the moss aside and I'll put it out in the garden, and most of it should stay kind of relatively alive over winter, and I can reuse the same moss again come spring to resurface the tree. So this is quite a long, boring task, so what I'll probably do is just work away, and then we'll come back once the surface of the soil is all demossed and we're ready to move to the next phase. Now that I've removed the majority of the moss, the last thing I want to do is come in and remove the moss from the trunk, because this can cause the trunk to rot and the bark to kind of darken or even kind of flake off. So just by removing the moss away from the base of the tree and up the trunk where it's grown, it just makes sure that everything stays nice and healthy. So now that we've got the tree defoliated and the surface of the pot all ready for winter, it's time to come in and do some branch selection and thinning and try and encourage that back budding further down in towards the centre of the tree. I can see there's some problematic branches, particularly in the lower section of the tree, so hopefully today we can kind of correct for those or do what we can. Bonsai is all about, you know, doing what we can, but whilst encouraging the health and the overall design of the tree. So, you know, I might be tempted to prune it back to here because we've got a bud forming, but I want to play it a bit safer so that we can ensure that we keep this branch. So I might prune it back a little bit further up. I can see there's also some advantageous buds that are starting to form on the trunk. So today we're in a really good position where we can look at those and decide whether we want to keep them and let them kind of grow into branches or remove them as well. So let's take a look at some of the first branches. So coming up the tree, we're presented with our first major branch. It's a really good structure we've got on the tree. We've got kind of the right branch, left or slightly back branch, and they kind of alternate up the tree like that. So this branch has been developed over a lot of time. You can see where there's been some big wounds that have been pruned off, and we're starting to grow some really nice kind of taper in the branch. Today, what I wanted to look at is this back branch bit of the tree. It just looks a bit awkward. We want the branches to kind of be flowing outwards, whereas this one kind of comes too far over. So we're in a position here where we potentially want to remove this branch. It will create really nice movement and taper. What I'll probably do is play it safe. There's potentially a leaf node bud here. I'm going to prune it back just in front of that, seal it up, and then potentially we will get another branch come from this stub. If not, we've got some really nice movement that we can continue to develop. So I'm going to remove this one now, leaving a few centimetres for dieback. And I'm going to apply some of this cut paste to the wound. And then early spring, we'll see if the bud just here develops or if we need to remove that entirely. We've got a stub we can clean up here. And again, we're just going to add some cut paste. We've got a really nice bud growing here, which I think will eventually become the branch leader. But for now, I don't want to weaken the tree too much. So I'm just going to remove some of the tips off this lower branch, just so that it remains vigorous and we don't lose that branch come spring. So coming up the tree, we can see we've got this next major branch here, and we've got some really nice buds forming along the trunk of the branch there, and there. But again, just like with the branch below, I don't want to weaken it too much or run the risk of losing it. So I'm just going to pull the tip off. We've got some nice healthy buds here that will survive. And then hopefully next year, when the branches grow out, we'll have a bit more choice. Now coming to our first back branch. We come up with the branch, we've got it dividing into two here. We have a branch that kind of whips around the front back into the centre of the tree. We don't want that, so I'm just going to remove that. And we've got a nice branch now heading back. This branch here starts to whip up and is creating a lot of vigour. We've got a nice branch forming behind. I can see there's a bud here, so I'm going to prune it back to there quite hard. And then we've got this as the backup, or potentially the bud will extend and that will be our branch leader. I've got a stub here that I can remove. Just put a little bit of cut paste on there as well. I only do a lot of cut paste like this in winter. in late spring when I do some pruning for the tree, I don't often do a lot of cut paste. It's just the winter air and winds can really dry out the tree. Next, we're moving up the tree. We've got this really nice curved branch. We've got a bud growing just on the inside there. I don't know if you can see it, but we don't want that forming, so I'm going to remove that. We've got a really nice branch that's growing out radially here, and one that's growing down, which we can remove. We don't want the tree growing down at this stage in the canopy. We want everything kind of growing up and out. So I'm just going to tidy up that branch. And then we can probably prune it back to here. We've got a nice bud forming there. Finally, coming into the upper part of the tree, we've got some really coarse branching starting to form. There's a bud here that will hopefully extend this year, and I can remove this entire branch so that we're keeping our branching in the canopy really nice and thin and delicate. But for now, I'm just going to tip the terminal bud and remove any stubs. With it being so high up in the tree canopy, this branch will probably respond quite vigorously and put out loads of branches. The next decision we got to make is we've got two ladder branches here. So we've got this kind of lower branch that's developing quite nicely, and then the new branch that's started to form here. What's happened is that the trees kind of sprouted this right above each other, and this doesn't create an aesthetically pleasing design. We've got kind of two branches stacked on top of each other, and then we've now got like a whirl of branches forming here, and it's already starting to create a bit of inverse taper. So I'm actually going to remove this branch entirely. We ideally want something kind of coming out over here for the tree, but it hasn't given us that opportunity yet. So hopefully we'll get a nice bud, which you can see potentially forming just here, and we can remove that tip off. So I'm just going to come in now and remove that branch. Try and get it as flush as I can. You see the cut there, and just come in with some cut paste and tidy it up. Notice the tree just wants to create branches here. There's also a bud forming below it, so we can remove that. Next, we've got this, well-developed branch at the top, but given its thickness, it doesn't kind of now match the tree. We've got two buds forming, one straight out the front and one straight out the back. So I'm actually going to remove this entire branch without knocking off the buds, hopefully. Leaving a stub here, and then once those buds grow out and become a bit stronger, I can make that a little bit more flush. But for now, I don't want to disrupt the sap flow too much, or cut it back too hard and run the risk of knocking those branches off, because we want to keep those. Finally, we're at the top of the tree. Again, this is where it's most vigorous. So I just want to remove it. We've got our leader, which will continue to grow here, and remove this bud because we have a potential ladder branch forming there. So that's the tree now all pruned up. You can see I've left the lower branches, much longer than the branches up in the canopy, and this is to hopefully keep these branches healthy and continue to develop them, whereas these branches will grow quite strong come spring. So the last thing I want to do now is to spray the tree down with some rose clear and hopefully just kill any of the crawling insects and bugs that might be on the surface of the branches and the bark. So here's what I've removed today. A couple of quite big branches, a lot of ramification, cleaned the surface of the soil to take away any moss and defoliated all the leaves. So taking a final look at the tree, we've got the front of the tree here, coming round to the side, got the back of the tree, coming round to the side and back to the front. So that's my beech all pruned up and ready to go back out on the bench for overwintering. Thank you guys for watching the video. If you've enjoyed this content, don't forget to leave us a like and subscribe, and look forward to seeing you in the next one.